Hey there, welcome to the 22nd episode of Under the Radar. I'm very pleased to be back. Today I'm going to wrap up this little series that I've been doing thus far on bands that were, to me, like heavy hitters. Bands that kind of influenced the scene that we got into. The people that I'm speaking of are the bands that played in like the Midwest, Chicagoland area in like the early 2000s. Like, our bands were influenced by these bands that I've been covering thus far. And so anyway, this will wrap it up. Last band that I covered was Lawrence Arms in the last episode. Lawrence Arms was on Fat Records, and much like them, this band that I'm about to cover is also a band that was on Fat Records at the time. This band is called Rise Against. Now, before I start talking about Rise Against, I think it's highly critically important that I bring up the band that they used to be before. At least two of the members were in a band called 88 Fingers Louie. And that was, I think they were formed in like 93. So they used to play, you know, with all those bands in Chicago, all those punk bands at Fireside Bowl, even before Fireside Bowl was around. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but they were on Fat Records. And then for a while they were on Hopeless Records for a while too. But yeah. The reason I knew about 88 Fingers Louie is because a guy named Mario that moved to our school like in Johnsburg, his cousin Dom was their original drummer. And so he played on the very, very early stuff that was on Fat Records. And then they signed to Hopeless Records and put out a bunch of other stuff. And eventually disbanded and formed Rise Against. But they were a very popular band, at least in our area. One of the drummers actually went on to start Alkaline Trio, Glenn Porter, the drummer after Dom. So Joe from 88 Fingers Louie, and then Dan Precision, also known as Mr. Precision, from 88 Fingers Louie, they started Rise Against. Now, initially, Rise Against was called Transistor Revolt, and they had an EP, and I actually used to have the EP. But I returned it to Dan before I moved from Chicagoland to New York, and he was pretty stoked to get that. It was like just a 3-song, like homemade CDR EP. So anyway, shortly after that, they went in and they recorded this record called The Unravelling, and they did this with Mass Giorgini at Sonic Iguana, and Dan also manned the boards with Mass. Now, with half of 88 Fingers Louie making up this new band Rise Against, they had additional members. Brandon was on drums. I think Brandon still is in Rise Against. He was in the band Pinhead Circus. They were on BYO Records. And then Tim, their lead singer, who is definitely still in the band, as well as Joe. But Tim was in a few different bands. He was in the Killing Tree. He was in a band Baxter, and then he was also in Arma Angelus, which I had mentioned Arma Angelus in the Fall Out Boy episode because Pete was the singer of Arma Angelus, hardcore band from Chicago. So anyway, it's just that's the background on them. When they dropped this record, it wasn't necessarily a big departure from 88's style too much, but the singing on it was so much different. I mean, than Dennis from 88 Fingers Louie. I mean, Tim has a noticeable voice, like nobody sounds like Tim. So right out the gates from the opening track, that actually starts with dialogue from Jack Black from the movie The Cable Guy, a song called Alive and Well.
Are you ready to rock?
Now you can really hear his style is just very distinct of singing Tim's. Very tight performance on this. Very lo-fi, like if you listen to anything else that Rise Against has really done. Now, Joe's bass playing was very definitive, and I would say influenced a lot of the Chicago punk band scene and their style of playing. And I think a really good song on here that shows an example of how you can really hear his style is on A Thousand Good Intentions. That's one of my favorites by them. I love that song. Now, a little bit of a more slower paced song that has a little bit more, I would say, accessibility to it. I think to me, it's like one of the more catchy, if you can call it catchy, because it's just punk rock, you know. Catchy tunes on the record was Ever Changing.
In the face of change, that's when she turned to me and said, I'm not sure anymore. And now, amidst the waves and the cloudless skies, the blanket the year before, watch my life was a shame. Have you ever been a part of something that you thought would never end? And then of course it did. Have you ever felt the weight inside you, falling away inside your skin? And then something had to give. Now the lines are drawn, is this feeling gone? Best parts of this have come and gone. And now that is all this is. The good reasons clear, we spent another year with Dr. Asher full of fear. And now things will be different.
Great song. Another song on here I think that was a fan favorite, and definitely one of my favorites. One of those songs that just stuck out on the record was Weight of Time. So after Rise Against dropped this record, they did some touring and they were writing new material, and somewhere like in, I want to say it was 2002, I don't know exactly all of the things that happened. I've heard stories from Dan, because I'm friends with Dan, which I won't disclose. But there are some funny stories. Regardless, there were some differences in the band, and Dan ended up departing from the band. I don't think he really wanted to, but it just didn't work out. And so they went and they recorded this record, also on Fat Records, their second record, Revolutions Per Minute. And I think Dan wrote a few of the riffs or whatever on it. But this band, it wasn't until their third record they signed to Geffen, and they just blew up hard on that acoustic jam. So that was like 2005. But Dan went and started a band called Break the Silence after he left to Rise Against, and they were also on Hopeless Records. They only did one record. I remember seeing them at Warped Tour, I think it was 2003 when they dropped this. And then they did some touring with Avenged Sevenfold before, right when Avenged Sevenfold had come out also. I don't know, I'd say Unraveling's my favorite record by them, but I guess I'm kind of partial. I did find out recently that this actual version, this is the original 2001 pressing of this CD, and it's actually out of print. So I guess this is worth a little bit of money. Can't really find the original pressing on CD. You can get, vinyl, I'm sure of it, or whatever. But there was a 2005 digital remix and remaster that Bill Stevenson did with Jason Livermore at the Blasting Room in Colorado. And I guess they released that digitally with like a bonus track or two. And there was, I think they ended up doing liner notes, and Dan had some commentary on it from helping out as engineer and recording it. So yeah, anyway, if you have original version of this record, it might be worth something. So worth checking into. Great record. This band obviously is stuck around, still around today and killing it. So if you've heard all the newer material and you haven't ever heard this record, I strongly recommend it. Maybe sometime I'll do an episode on a little bit about Dan, and I actually had a project that we started. We wrote an entire like punk record, and I was singing. It was just us two were forming it, and we had a tentative name for it, and I still have all the demos. We were gonna start this band, and I decided to move to New York for a career opportunity, and that never really came to fruition. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff we were writing together. Maybe sometime I'll bust that out on an episode. But in other news, speaking of Dan Precision, I'm going to Chicago, and I had mentioned this before. I'm going to be meeting with my buddy Mark Esses, who plays currently in the bands Flowers for Dorian and a more well-known band called For the Fallen Dreams on Rise Records. He will be drumming on 3 songs with me, and we are going to be tracking at the Bomb Shelter in Park Ridge, Illinois, and that will be with my buddy Dan Precision. So I'm pretty excited to see him in less than a month now, I think that is. We'll be laying it down, getting these 3 songs done, and they're very aggressive. Like, one's punk rock, one's got some ska punk influence, and then the other one is a very like nu metal kind of hardcore feel to it. So they're definitely weird experimental rock songs that contain influences from my past that I haven't gotten to really use in any of like the last few different projects I've done, and I just kind of wanted to do something different for Slave the Servant. So I thought it would be cool to disperse a bunch of like beats and crazy like hip hop and soul and spoken word and stuff like that amongst some really experimental, different kind of styled rock songs, whether they're faster and more aggressive, or there's a couple of songs on this mixtape that I'm working on that are a little slower too, but are rock, and that'll be pretty interesting too. So anyway, looking forward to going there, doing that. In other news, Never Greener just dropped last week. It's on all digital platforms, Spotify, you name it. Go search for Slave to Servant, Never Greener. You'll find it. Go check out the music video here on the YouTube channel. Got that there. And please subscribe to the channel below if you can. I appreciate that very much. Any comments? Leave any comments about bands that influenced you. I'm looking forward to getting back on track with a little bit more of the underground scene that I was a part of bands. Anyhow, I'll be seeing you soon, and thanks for your time.